Well, fundamentally, emergency evacuation is moving people from a location of danger to a location of safety. But it can become very complex very quickly depending on what the hazard is and how much advance warning time we have and how far the distance is that we need to evacuate people. Prior to, say, the last 15 years or so, the role of transportation in evacuations was quite limited in terms of what it was envisioned that we could do in engineering and planning to facilitate evacuations. And I think the series of events, whether it was 9/11 or Hurricane Katrina, events like that have showed us that there's a lot that we can do to better manage the flow of traffic and the movement of people during emergencies. Surprisingly, evacuations occur much more frequently than people might realize. There's been recent studies sponsored by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission conducted by the Sandia National Laboratories that showed that evacuations of more than 1,000 people happen on average, every 2 to 3 weeks somewhere in the United States. What really catches the headlines are these, million or 500,000 person hurricane evacuations, but really there are a lot of hazards for which evacuations occur that are much more localized and then involve far fewer people. Those are by far the most common. Well, when we look at evacuations, particularly from a transportation standpoint, we're really looking at time and space. So we look at the time and space considerations or characteristics of the hazard. So how long do we have as far as advance warning time given by a particular hazard? And how big of a geographic area does that hazard impact? Is it on the order of a city block or two? Or are we talking about for a hurricane that might affect hundreds and hundreds of miles of coastline? Then we look at the movement of people over time and space. Where do people live? Where do they need to get to? Where are their routes? What are their options as far as travel mode? And then how long does it take to get the warning to them? And how long do travel times take to go from these various locations? So we can break those things down into these time and space variables, and it gives us a lot better understanding of what we can then do to apply transportation resources to meet those needs. The process of the Katrina evacuation and the successes and the failures were really part of an evolving process of engineering and planning that had started probably 7 or 8 years prior. Back in 1998, there was Hurricane George that threatened the area, and was recognized that a lot of the planning and policies that were in place, or lack thereof, really was not could result in problems during an evacuation. So there was a lot of work that was done, particularly traffic management planning with using contraflow. We can reverse the flow in freeways all into an outbound direction. And those plans were put in place, or were in place for Hurricane Ivan in 2004. And even when they were used, they revealed some of the difficulties that were encountered in evacuation. So then we kind of went back to the drawing board yet again and analyzed the traffic conditions and things that could be done to improve traffic movements during a major regional evacuation. So the Louisiana Department of Transportation, along with the Louisiana State Police, were able to develop a regional traffic management plan. And that worked quite effectively during Hurricane Katrina. But that event also revealed other problems. And the big problem there was the limited planning that had been done for low mobility evacuees, special needs evacuees, functional needs evacuees. So that improvements were made again after that event. And then those were once again tested in 2008 during Hurricane Gustav. And it was shown that again, conditions were even improved yet still above what we saw during Katrina. And that type of planning and that kind of lessons learned and improvements is still going on to this very day. Evacuations are best managed through a collaborative effort. So when we look at an evacuation, the key players obviously are emergency management agencies, and they usually take the leading role during these types of emergencies. But there also can be key roles played by departments of transportation, by transit agencies, professionals basically in transportation who know transportation networks and they know how to get traffic moving and keep it moving. Another key component are first responders like police agencies who can be out there and direct and command and control evacuations from a boots on the ground perspective. But there's even other roles as well. There are people like planners, people in academia and research like myself who can contribute by looking at different scenarios or modeling different scenarios so that it gives us an advantage of what we might be able to expect and how best we can utilize and allocate resources during those types of emergencies. Communications is the key for evacuations. And when we look at communications, there's multiple levels, both horizontally and vertically, if you will. So we have to look at the importance of communications from not just from the authorities to evacuees, but within government agencies and across government agencies. So we have different levels of government, and we have communications that need to take place across jurisdictions or across agencies. So the transportation people need to be able to talk to the police, and the police need to talk to the emergency managers and vice versa. So it goes on and on and on. There's also a need during the actual event to get information in, data in, so that we have an idea of actually what's going on, and the most effective information can be communicated to evacuees to facilitate their trip in the most ideal way. There are National Cooperative Highway Research Program reports that I can cite. NCHRP Report 740, that is basically a guide for planning evacuations. There are NCHRP Synthesis 392 that discusses the role of transportation during evacuations. There are also reports that look at the role of transit in evacuations, and even broadening that out to more resilience concepts in general, how to plan for emergencies and other types of large events. What we also see is there's a number of other benefits, secondary benefits, that can come from emergency planning for evacuations, and that can be applied to any scenario where we have mass movements of people. Some examples might be a concert or a sporting event where we have a lot of traffic that's moving out. Well, it's interesting that the same techniques that we use to manage the movement of people for an emergency can be applied directly to these types of major events. In fact, what we also see is that these techniques can even be used almost in a routine daily basis, where we have a traffic incident and traffic needs to be rerouted, or we have a temporary shutdown or a blockage of lanes. What we can do is implement some of these, not just the techniques, but the communication and coordination protocols that are used during emergencies to also serve transportation needs during these type of events as well. The United States Department of Transportation, through their Emergency Transportation Operations Office website, offers a number of various guides and research publications that give information, useful information and guidance. There's the Transportation Research Board through the Subcommittee on Emergency Evacuation that is actively engaged in research projects. And through these activities, there's the organizations like the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, the Transit Cooperative Research Program, that provide guidebooks and information and resources that really seek to bridge the emergency management community and the transportation community so that we can engage in better emergency planning. For more information, viewers can go to the NDPTC website for a list of links to many of the resources that I've discussed.